Welcome back. As you can see, I am not C.L. Miller. I'm actually Carrie Pack, one of the interlude authors, and I've been asked to host this panel because the lovely C.L. Miller is actually an interlude author herself, going by the pen name of Erin Finnegan.
Hello, also known as Girly Sports Junkie, getting outside after standing in my kitchen all night long, so getting a little vitamin D.
It looks gorgeous there too, by the way.
Thank you. It's a nice day.
Yes. We also have Lynn Charles. Do you want to say hello?
Hello. I'm Don't Be Fancy on Tumblr.
And finally, actually able to connect for this panel, I'm so excited, is Laura Stone.
Hi, and I am Stony321 online. Pretty much everywhere.
Yes. Stony, Stony, Stony. I like your Twitter handle, Stony Boboni.
I do too. That's one of my favorites.
Thanks.
Mine's so boring.
It's all that was available.
The downside of having a common sounding name.
Yeah.
So I would like to start off, I guess, by having each of you say a little bit about your title, because I think we haven't announced a couple of these titles yet. Laura, your title was announced, right?
Yes.
But we haven't announced the other two. So Laura, if you want to go first, you can talk about yours, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. So what it would say on the back and what I would tell you, Oliver Andrews is a people pleaser. He's always kind of lived his life to make other people happy and has made decisions in his life to kind of fulfill a path that was laid out for him. And as a result, he lost the love of his life. They grew up together in high school. Years later, he finds himself working on his master's, his MPhil at Cambridge University in England, when he sees a video that a friend has sent him of this former love of his life, Seth Larson, who somehow is on a talk show in the morning singing a song he's never heard. And he's made it as a Broadway star, which was what he'd always wanted to do. And this kind of sends him down a spiral of rethinking his life and rethinking his choices. Still in love and still wanting to be with him, but there's an ocean between them, and how can he possibly make it work? So you'd have to read to find out if he can.
Okay, Erin, why don't you tell us about your title and reveal, of course, the mysterious novel that you have found.
Yeah, right. The worst kept secret of IP. There's a reason I'm sitting in my vineyard today in front of the Syrah, and that's because Sotto Voce is about a vineyard where some magnificent Syrah is grown, but more importantly about a character named Thomas Baldwin, who sees himself as quite a metropolitan leader in the wine world. He's a wine critic who's very, very influential. He can make or break careers, and gets a bit flummoxed when his boss decides to send him to wine country, which shouldn't upset most people, but they send him there to the middle of California's agricultural zone for a year, and he considers himself quite a city boy. And not only vexed because of that, but also because of his assignment, which is to create a contest, which is basically rigged, between the giant conglomerate wineries of Napa and small artisanal wineries of Sonoma, even though Sonoma has corporate wineries and Napa has some artisanal as well. But his boss wanted to play on those stereotypes and create a second Judgment at Paris. And in doing so, he's able to get Napa on board very easily because they see the promotional aspect of it. On the other hand, he gets to Sonoma and realizes that in order to get these small winemakers on board, there's one person he really needs to convince to buy into it, and it's the one person who wants absolutely nothing to do with his magazine or his contest or anything having to do with this, and it happens to be this young, enigmatic, and slightly grumpy winemaker who happens to grow the loveliest, velvetiest Syrah he's ever tasted. And so it's a story of attraction versus ethics, corporate climate versus family farming, and ultimately sort of a fish out of water trying to figure out if he belongs in a high-rise or in a vineyard.
And a hot, sweaty, dirty winemaker.
Yeah.
In that,
I mean, to put it bluntly. No,
Always an advantage.
And finally, we have Lynn Charles, who most of you probably in fandom would, that if you are part of the Clane fandom, would know her from her fics, Angel in a Red Vest or Hold the Line. But she has actually penned Interlude Press's first original from the ground up novel. This one did not originally have its legs as fan fiction. So, Lynn, why don't you tell us a little bit about your title?
Yes, my book is called Chef's Table, and it's about a New York City James Beard-winning chef. He's working in Hell's Kitchen, and he's kind of done all the right things to climb the culinary ladder, so to speak. And he's up at the top looking down and realizing that it kind of blows. And so it's it's a journey of him trying to find his way and actually realizing that they're in his roots and in the lessons he's learned growing up. And he finds that, of course, through a very unexpected place in a diner cook. And of course, they fall in love because that's what we write. And so it's just their journey together and finding out who they're supposed to be and appreciating where they came from.
Love it. As I said, it is the first original from the ground up novel, and I kind of wanted to talk about how maybe writing that, knowing that you're writing it with the intent of it being an original novel, how that differed maybe from writing some fan fiction.
It was different, and I'll be real honest up front. This was originally created as fan fiction, but I was working on it when IP came to me and said, "What are you working on now?" And I told them. So we yanked it around and took all that out of it. But it was totally different in that you don't have, at least for me, there's always been this little voice of, is this still in character? Is this still in character? And that can kind of blockade you sometimes. And so I was able to throw that voice out and tell her to go away, and freed me up a little bit. I don't think I expanded as much as I wanted to, so I'm anxious to do something else too and spread my wings a little bit more. But it was just nice not to have any kind of parameters on me whatsoever, and I could just write the story I wanted to write and not have to worry about anything else, or frankly what anyone else thought about it, and just make it a good book.
Absolutely. You brought up an interesting point about developing original characters, which I think we talked about it on the panel I was on. I know this has come up. But were there challenges in converting from fan fiction to original characters? Because the advantage, of course, with fan fiction always is that people know what the characters look like, they know some background on them, they know their voice. So maybe, Laura, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the challenge of converting your fan fiction characters into original characters.
that was actually something that I had the most fun doing. I really enjoyed trying to, Lynn, you brought up the point of you always want it to be in character when you're writing fanfic. And for me, whenever I'm writing, I always want to break it down to who are they ultimately? What is it that makes them tick? What is the core part of their personality that makes them act the way that they do? So I had to take that and find out what about that was important to this particular story. And in the original fanfic version, I see who it was based on as very much of a people pleaser. But he has lots of other kind of qualities, a showboat and so forth. But I wanted to take that people-pleasing aspect and build on that, and just kind of saw this prep school kid who grew up with kind of a domineering father, and what would make somebody behave in that way that would make them kind of lay out a life map that wasn't really speaking to who they were. So I had a lot of fun figuring those little points out. I did change a few a few characters into original characters, and that was really the most fun. And that was Seth Larson, who is our Broadway star in my story. His family got a massive makeover, and kind of grew up on the wrong side of the tracks with 6'5" massive biker dad and all of his biker buddies who just took him in, took this sort of effeminate young man that wanted to be on Broadway and dance and kind of be the next Neil Patrick Harris. They took this kid in and loved him because, that's my experience with that culture. I've got a lot of people in my family who are bikers and mechanics and things like that, and you know what? If they love you, and everybody's got something about them. So, what's being gay and wanting to sing and dance on stage? They like watching Vin Diesel movies. So, so that was probably the most fun for me, where I got to really create somebody and still honor the original character and what made the person that it was based on, what made them special to me, and then just kind of take that little spark and shove it in this other guy. In not a dirty way.
Maybe a little. Erin, look at him. Erin, I know that you actually wrote your fan fiction with the intent with the hope, I guess, of maybe one day making it into a novel. Did that affect kind of how you wrote your alternate universe at all?
I don't know if I ever expected it to actually undergo that, but I certainly wrote it with that in mind. I think I did. I saw the fan fiction characters as sort of placeholders, but I wanted to insert other personalities, other backgrounds into them. It was AU, and I wanted to start there when it was fan fiction. So the transition over to novel was pretty easy on that front. I mean, there was some more fleshing out to do, and there were some secondary characters that, frankly, I wasn't satisfied with in the fan fiction version, and they got particularly one got a bit of an overhaul to hopefully be a little more complex, a little less cookie cutter, because there was one I just was dissatisfied with when I was done with it. And so he underwent an overhaul, but the main characters, I think from the get-go, I was looking to create something independent of that space, and hopefully I got that. And this was just an opportunity to dig a little deeper with them.
Do you feel like you have a favorite character now among these that you've tinkered with?
I'm particularly fond of Greg Kennedy. Don't drink my water, hey. Gone. The dog drank my water. And Greg Kennedy, the winemaker, I like the grumpy, perhaps grumpy winemaker. He's a complex and maybe a little troubled guy. Who came from a background of some privilege, but just didn't quite fit the niche of what was expected. This sounds a little familiar, like Laura's character, but went a very different direction and kind of pulled a fast one on his family. He was a trust fund baby, but had to meet certain parameters to claim it, and that involved getting a degree that could lead to a quote-unquote respectable profession, that being chemistry, but in studying chemistry discovered enology and viticulture as well. Combined the two, grabbed his trust fund and moved to California, bought himself a little plot of land, and became a gentleman farmer. So turned his back on a kind of a city lifestyle and chucked it all to be in the country. And I think he's a kind of interesting guy. He's smart, he's book smart, but he's also very people smart and learns to be very respectful of the sort of family tradition of farming and the history and culture of the people who work the vines in California. And there is a very rich culture there, and I like that complexity of that character a lot.
Now, I know that you yourself are a bit of an amateur winemaker. Is there any of you in your grumpy winemaker?
When I'm up for 30 hours straight, you bet there is. Yeah, sure. I assume there's some of him in me. Not all, but yeah, I would think so. I mean, I love coming home. I used to work downtown, so city girl by day and farm girl by evening. But I also think I identify a little bit with one of the supporting characters, the kind of bossy uh, friend of who happens to be a friend of both the lead characters, a college friend of the wine critic and current buddy and troublemaker with the winemaker. She likes to tell it like it is, even if it gets her in trouble from time to time, and there's a certain aspect of that I identify with too. So, there may be a little bit of me here, sprinkled here and there.
I think that's pretty common for a lot of writers to throw in a little bit of themselves into characters. I'll open this up to the other two members of our panel. Do either of you feel like you've have elements of yourself in any of your characters, and if so, why?
Yep.
That's it. I like
You didn't even think about it.
Nope. That would be the drunken girl trying to constantly get with the gay lead, even though she knows she doesn't have a chance in hell. I don't know where I'd get the inspiration for that. And anybody who's met me in real life reads that story and goes, "Oh, is that based on you?" I'm like, "No."
So tell us a little bit more about this character then, Laura. Chasing after the gay guy. Let's hear more about that.
Well, she's actually a combination of me and one of my dearest friends who I met through fandom and has become one of my favorite travel partners. Her online handle is Doval. She's my Kiwi buddy and is the only person who has ever been able to drink me under the table. Because if you didn't know, she's Irish and she's from New Zealand. So genetically speaking, she's 78% liver. So she can process booze like just about no one else. And I actually have a little throwaway mention to her that I put in the book. So she's just great. But we both have a long history of, gosh, I know you're gay, but if ever you thought he might want to try, so we both have that history. So yeah, she's based on someone real.
What about you, Lynn? How about anyone in your real life influenced your characters in any way?
Oh, definitely. I have one particular character. He doesn't come into the story until much later. An older gentleman, and I shouldn't say this, but I probably could have lifted the human being and planted him in the novel almost identically. He was a character I met a few years ago when I was working with the Red Cross. And he was such a character. Every time he'd come into our office and I talked to him, I thought, you're going to end up in one of my books one day. So he is most definitely in there in all of his messy but genuinely caring self. And so he's definitely in there. And I show up too. Like you said, I think all authors tend to do that. And my main protagonist, there are parts of Evan that my husband reads what I write, bless his pointy little head, and he laughs sometimes at how much he'll see little things of me in the Evan character especially. So yeah, that people trickle in and they say there's a shirt I've always wanted, and everyone's heard the expression, but be careful what you say, you'll end up in my novel. And I very much live up to that. So I do take bits of conversation and personality quirks and throw them into my characters, most definitely.
I'm all for that.
That's right.
So it sounds like you guys have a lot of personal attachment to these characters and their quirks. But in the process of transitioning your work, even you, Lynn, because I know you said you started to write it as a fan fiction, did you have to kill any darlings during the adaptation process?
I had one darling I had to kill that wasn't related to fanfic at all. It was a story that opens my book. I could keep that story there, but I brought it back up later in the book to finish the story, and it really didn't have a point other than I wanted it in there and I thought it was a great story. So I had to kill that, and that I was bummed about that. And then there were things, as you say, with transitioning, little things that make the reference material who they are that we had to kill. Kind of made you have to rework their personality a little bit more. For example, we all know that most of us are writing originally from the Glee and the Acclaim fandom, and Kurt's mother is dead, and that really can't be a part of who they are. And so sometimes those things that would have maybe factored into who this character is as an adult, I had to pull that out and rework that. And I don't know if that was a darling necessarily, but it was a bit of a process to do.
That actually brings up a really great point. I'll let you guys get to the Kill Your Darlings question in a minute, but we did have a question from Winnie, who asked, with fan fiction, readers automatically feel a connection to the characters. By changing it into an original piece of work, how did you go about fleshing out the story so that it would appeal to the general audience? Because, like I said in the beginning, we've got an established visual and established character to deal with. Did that kind of factor in a little bit with how you were writing, Lynn?
You asking me? Okay. Yeah, I think it did. I had to, for me, oddly enough, I use Corbis photos, stock photos, and the first thing I did was I plopped myself on that website and I found new physical muses to work with, and then in staring those boys down, kind of was able to rework some personality things and do that. And I think it's the most important thing is to still make them interesting, because that's why we love the fan things that we love, is because these characters are interesting. And so it just had to really hone in on that, and that helped me anyway to do that, was to just look at these pictures and kind of put a story in them as I saw them, rather than just pulling something out of my head. So that's what helped me, and hopefully then that helped make these characters more interesting, that it doesn't matter if you know the resource material, you just still want to be with them and want to be in their lives for a little while.
Absolutely. Laura, what about you? Did you have to kill any darlings, or maybe even you can talk a little bit too about how you decided what to keep, because I think you said you kept a little bit of some of the characteristics of your characters.
Well, I think the size of my book will attest that I did not kill many darlings. It's a big story. There was a lot of words. I actually cut out, I think, something like 18,000 words from the original fanfic, which is a huge chunk. However, because my story, as it existed as fanfic, started years in the future and then deals in flashback, and relies on that fandom shorthand. So we know what they look like, we know their relationships, we know things that have happened to them in the past. I had to add that in. So it's hard for me to think if I even had to kill anything, because I had to build and layer in so much, just so that when you pick it up and you read the first page, you don't go, who on earth are these people? So that was the first question. What was the second one? I was up at 4. Oh. What was that?
I'm doing a terrible job of transitioning because I decided to read that question and then totally.
No, that was impressive. Kill Your Darlings, and then the second one.
The other one was, you said earlier about you chose to keep kind of some of the characteristics. You changed one from the other. And yeah.
So I think it's possible. Something that I think is true for storytelling, regardless of what it is. I don't care if you're painting, if you're singing a song, writing poetry, telling a story. What makes us care is that there are specific human elements that we all identify with. We all know the general archetypes. You know, you've got the hooker with a heart of gold. You got, just all the different little characters that we all are familiar with, and have qualities that we can, if not identify with, that we can understand and connect with or empathize with. So for me, having some of those characteristics stay wasn't necessarily, how do I put that, like cheating and keeping my fanfic characters, because I do think that they ended up being very, very unique. But we all have these qualities in ourselves that kind of resonate true regardless of who you are, your background, how you were raised. I think we all, that's why we connect, and that's why we continue to tell stories and share our stories, because there's a part that you'll read something or you'll hear something in a song or you'll see something in a picture that you're like, that's it. Yes, I know that feeling. I know that that moment, and it keeps you reading, listening, watching, whatever. So.
Erin, I want to ask you kind of the same question, but rather than kill your darlings, did you have to prune the vine, so to speak? God,
Yeah.
I'm horrible with the puns. Sorry.
And then they had to grow a little bit too, so they almost evened out. It's a little longer than it was originally, but not a lot, maybe 5,000 words or so, because there were things that had to come out, and something a lot of us have dealt with in the process if we are converting a fic into an original novel. One of the things we tend to do a lot in fan fiction is rely on music to set a tone, and of course, unless you're willing to pay for the rights to that music, it's got to go. Or you've got to find a different way to describe what's going on. And that's something I did with the original, because I really wanted to kind of establish characters that way, and music is a part of Greg's life. It's what he names all his wines after. And so, it's still relevant to it, but I couldn't use it as much as I wanted to. Whether it's this, club music and the critic from New York, or this sort of rustic folk music that Greg is so fond of. And so, you have to work around that. I still tried to insert a bit of it in, but it all had to come out. And so that actually took a bit of book out. On the other hand, there was a chance to expand some characters too. So, I axed some music, but I inserted some character.
I do have a question from one of our viewers, which is actually Buckeye Girl, our lovely Becky. She wanted to know about the concept of writing what you know, which I think is advice that writers are given quite a bit. And she says it's advice that seems like it would make sense, but doesn't always lead to good stories. How do you find that balance in taking what you know through work or hobbies? For example, Erin, you with the winemaking, Lynn, you've written about working with the EMTs, or Red Cross, and of course academia for Laura. And how do you use that to maybe launch or augment your stories?
You know what? In some ways, it almost puts a little more pressure on you, I think, because particularly with the winemaking, it can slip into jargon, and yet you need an aspect of that. You want to be able to describe the artistry of wine tasting, and there is an art to it, without sounding like wine spectator or wine enthusiast, and sounding very pretentious, and yet somehow
Notes of asphalt.
Notes of asphalt. There you go. So you're trying to strike a balance there. You want to get there is very technical terminology. There's science to this, and that's all very relevant. But you don't want to bog the story down in it. And it's really easy to have that happen. And yet, some of it is so relevant and important to the character as well. I mean, the fact that this guy's trying to avoid using chemicals on his vines—that's relevant to him. He's trying to do organic gardening, but it's a really tough thing to do in the winemaking business. So I found that on the one hand it was helpful and it's what I enjoyed writing about, but on the other hand it kind of gave me, it put some pressure on me to do it right and make sure that I wasn't making mistakes, because I didn't want, winemaker makes a mistake on winemaking, I'd feel like an idiot.
I'm familiar with that feeling, of feeling like an idiot, that is. Laura or Lynn, maybe one of you want to weigh in on this. How has your personal experiences kind of influenced your writing?
I'll pitch in. You mentioned Red Cross, and that did contribute to a fanfic. But there's also the idea, and I think we've probably all seen the quote, that the write what you know is decent advice, but better advice is write what you want to know. And that's kind of what I took with this one. I love to cook. I love the food world. It intrigues the hell out of me, but I have no finger in it, other than what I do in my own kitchen, which you don't always want to be a part of. So I took that idea and ran with it, and I was very fortunate with this book to have one person come to me and say, hey, I'm a senior line cook in New York City, and I would love to help you and consult with you on this book.
Nice.
And needless to say, I jumped on that like nobody's business. And then I have the pleasure of meeting someone who lives down here who was a pastry chef in New York, and he runs a deli down here. And he's a Brooklyn boy, and he factored into my character of Patrick unbelievably, not only in knowledge but just in personality a little bit too. So I ended up learning so much about this culinary world that I would have never learned had I not written this book. And I hope it's accurate. I hope a chef doesn't read it and go, please, woman. But I like that, and I'd like to do that again. It was wonderful to take what little I knew and grow with it and learn about this world while I wrote it.
It's one of those books, I'm fortunate enough to have read it, that you're hungry afterwards. It's like going to see the movie, if you see the movie Big Night or any of those, afterwards you're just like ravenous for food. She describes the food beautifully.
It's like after reading yours where you want to have a glass of wine, or maybe I just want a glass of wine all the time. I haven't.
Yeah. As it should be read.
Yes, you should definitely read it with a glass of wine, and you should definitely read Lynn's book with a bottle.
Cheesecake.
A big old slice of cheesecake.
I love it. What should we pair with your book, Laura?
Another book. No, that doesn't work. Well, there's a lot of sex. So somebody that you're super into, that's probably a good one.
Pair a booty call with your book.
There you go. Nice. So that's the whole write what you know.
So write what you know. You wrote a lot about booty calls. No.
I'm just saying. No. I don't mean to brag or anything, but I have had sex. So pretty sure that these kids are mine. I don't know, but
well, let's talk about the write what you know part in seriousness. How much of your life experience kind of made it into the final of The Bones of You?
Not very much, because I've never been to Cambridge. I am not an academic. I don't have graduate degrees. I have never been on Broadway. I had to actually write a Shakespearean play, which I loved Shakespeare, and I have read most of his works multiple times. So that was really fun for me to write about Shakespeare's life and to turn it into this kind of Baz Luhrmann sexy musical that features in the background. It's a play within a play. But other than that, it's what I knew were the emotions, and what I knew were the connections between people. So I had to do a lot of research, which I think is really important, and Lynn, you picked up on that. Write what you want to know about. There's this great quote that's going around right now about if everybody wrote what they knew, all we would have were these, novels about English professors having a midlife crisis and wanting to commit adultery. So Hmm. So, and then you'd have to kind of wonder about Thomas Harris and the Hannibal novels. So, I hope he doesn't know about cannibalism. I hope that's not true. But you definitely, I think what you need to know is you need to know how to tell a story. And you need to know how to make people that your reader's going to care about. Everything else is research. And that's what I know.
That was a good summation. So how did you guys first get into writing fan fiction? Have you always kind of wanted to write a novel, or I know Laura, you've been in fan culture for a while, and I think Lynn has as well.
Yes.
When did that start for you?
Go ahead, Lynn.
I started back about, let's see, what year is it? 21st, about 14 years ago in fandom, and I picked up the digital pen probably 10, 12 years ago, and petered around on my own and thought maybe I could do this, and ended up a story took hold about 12 years ago that in another fandom, and it was just a great feeling. I'd always written, I'd journaled all my life, and always wanted to write creatively, and never, at least where I grew up, never had an outlet. I wanted to take classes. There never were any. I even signed up for a creative writing class in high school because the college prep course was Introduction to Novel, and we had to read very fast, and I'm a very slow reader, and I couldn't keep up. So I took creative writing class in high school, thought, yay, finally, and it was the journalism class, and we wrote for the school newspaper. So that wasn't creative at all.
What a bummer.
I was really bummed. And so I don't have any, training in this. I just know what I like to read, and, everything is derivative in some fashion. You pick and pull from other things. And so anyway, but yeah, it was 12 years ago, my first fanfic, and then I didn't write for a chunk of time for numerous reasons, and then picked it back up again about 3 years ago. And I'm not sure if I answered your question now.
You did. No, you did. You did.
I did. Okay.
Did anyone else want to weigh in on that?
Well, I have been a fangirl since Star Wars came out in, what is that, 77? And my cousin and I were like 2 weeks apart, total sci-fi geeks. We had all of the figures, we had all of the ships, which was pretty sweet if you had a Millennium Falcon, I'm just saying. And we would create these elaborate stories. And when I was 9 years old, I wrote down, because I wanted to preserve this, summer of Star Wars that, that we had created. And this was after Empire Strikes Back was when I started writing down the stories. And it was Han and Leia, because they are my original OTP. And so I started writing that stuff. I am not ashamed to love Han and Leia. I'm sorry. So we started writing that those things down, and I didn't know that that was fan fiction. Cut to me being a teenager, and I'm writing, meeting Dave Gone from Depeche Mode stories, which everybody's got those embarrassing Mary Sue things that they've written as kids. So I've always written these kinds of stories, and I've always written my own stories as well. But I didn't really start to hone that until the last, I'd say probably about 10 years or so, when I joined LiveJournal. But I go back to like the CompuServe days, the Yahoo groups, the AltNet groups. And we had to get an invitation just to read someone writing about meeting their favorite celebrity. It's just ridiculous. But it wasn't until LiveJournal with the feedback culture of fandom, which is fantastic, so I started really figuring out, okay, this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm not good at, this is my wheelhouse, and then this is what I like to write. And just trying to figure out, because I took creative writing in college, as most of us did, but I didn't learn as much about my own style of writing and what I was capable of until I joined fandoms, really. Officially joining fandoms online, because back in the old days of fanzines, you couldn't you had to be somebody for anybody to read what you wrote, and then there wasn't any feedback. So I've been in multiple fandoms over the years, and yeah, I've probably learned more about myself as a writer through writing fanfic. I just think it's a terrific exercise, and it can be something that you can take seriously, which I do. I didn't always, and I don't always. I do like to write some really crazy stuff out there, which is kind of how I built a name for myself, was writing some cracked out stuff. But I think regardless of if you take it seriously or if it's just something that you just want to do because it's fun and you want to connect with people, because we've all read those stories too, it's a great learning tool. I just think it's a fantastic way to connect with people and to figure out what people are interested in, to see what you do that people are interested in, which is a valuable skill as a writer, because you may think you do something fantastic and nobody cares, and you have to figure out why isn't that working, and that's a good lesson, and it's a free lesson. Oh, it's awesome. Big fan.
Erin, how about you? How long have you been involved with fan culture and writing fan fiction?
You know, I didn't realize I was a fangirl or in fan culture for years until I actually got exposed to the, you know, sort of formal version of it just a few years ago. I'm the newbie of the bunch here. I'd say I've been around it now for a little over 3 years, maybe 4 at this point. So, you know, it was all a new thing. I came into it very sort of jaded and you know, thinking of it in terms of the cliches. And unfortunately, the first thing I read in it was something, I think, on fanfic.net that was appallingly bad and did nothing to change my opinion. And then I stumbled across, I think the first thing was Someone Like You. And I was stunned by it, and The Bones of You was it was right about the same time, I think. And I saw those two and I said, I want to do this. There are serious writers in here, and this is good stuff. Writing fiction was never really my background. I started out as a newspaper reporter, and I was in journalism for a long time, and then shifted over to PR. So, you know, writing and editing's always been a part of my life, but the creative writing, the other side of writing, and fiction is something that, you know, I've just been developing in the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years or so.
Erin, both you and Laura brought up a really good point about the kind of general perception of fan fiction. What do you guys think about that general perception? Is it changing? Do you feel like, was there any trepidation maybe about coming out as a fic writer?
I've found that I have more trouble coming out about the fan fiction part than the fact that I'm writing gay romance. Interestingly enough. And I'm not sure how I feel about that truth, but that seems to be what's been happening. I can out myself as a gay romance writer, but I don't tell people it's centered in fanfic. Because a lot of the times if you say fanfic, they look at you, what? They don't even know what it is. And so you have to go through this long, involved explanation, and it's just not worth it. So I don't go in.
I think there's less and less of that now. And at first I was sort of terrified of telling anyone, and then when I finally did, they were like, let me see it. You know, I want to read this.
Yeah, they're okay once I explain it, but
yeah, cool. Very
not
large.
Me, I'm proud.
Yeah, you're out and proud.
I'm out and about, yo.
okay.
Yeah, no, I'm good with it. You know, it was something that was very fleeting because the response was extremely positive. So, but I know that I think that fan fiction's kind of in this cusp territory right now, where there's still some of that. On an earlier panel, Wordplaying described it as fan shame. And yet, particularly since, you know, the dreaded 50 Shades, you know, there's so much of a heightened awareness of fan fiction, and the fact that there is good fan fiction out there. It's not all crazy, cracky stuff. And hey, the crazy, cracky stuff is fun. I fully admit. but there are some serious writers out there too, and some serious professional writers out there as well who don't necessarily, excuse me, let the fan world know who they are. There are some reasons. There are some great writers out there, some amateur, some pro. The thing that's great about it is watching the enthusiasm behind getting better and just writing and writing and writing some more and getting that feedback. That's the thing I love about it.
In that vein, then, is all of your is your fan fiction still available online?
Yes. Although my PDF is wonky right now, but that's not me closing it off. It's me being a dope about how to make sure it's working. I got to fix it.
Technology.
Can I say one thing about fan culture and fan shame and coming out as a fanfic writer?
Please do.
Because the way I see it is this, and for me it's simple, and I know it isn't for everybody, and I'm not trying to say that everybody should take on because everybody's got different things happening in the background. I get that. For me, take my dad, who can tell you every single stat about the Texas Rangers and say the Mets. He can tell you everything going back 75 years, every single player. He can tell you about the big things that they've won, the big losses they've had, who was traded, who was this, controversy here, controversy there. He's got to wear his gear, and he goes to the game. And he's not alone. You know, you go to any football game, and you've got a row of 9 guys with their shirts off and their chests are painted, and they're totally into it, and they only wear the jersey of their favorite person, and they talk about it, and they have fantasy baseball, football, basketball leagues.
They have dens decorated.
It's the same.
Exactly, and their house is decorated in it. They want to have everything they can get signed by that person, and somehow that's a legitimate fan and is normalized, and that's okay. But if I want to write about Derek Hale and his ongoing angst and the torture that he is made to suffer on the show Teen Wolf, somehow that's weird and creepy or not normal. And I'm less fanatical than the guy painted up in green at the football game.
At the football game where it's 10 degrees below
10 degrees and he's naked and painted. Exactly.
You don't paint yourself green
and has a fantasy league and yeah.
You don't paint yourself green when you watch Teen Wolf?
No, I paint myself blue, and it's an important distinction. I'm just kidding. So whenever I hear things like fan shame, to me that's just a part of this old idea that if I don't mean to make it like a sexist thing, but a lot of times the interests that women have, because a lot of fanfic writers tend to be women, a lot of this kind of fan culture is driven by women. As Wordplaying was talking about, the difference between guy fans and girl fans, it's like it's a hobby for us, and it's something that's like it's cute, head pat. Whereas it's serious if you're totally into, the Texas Rangers and you want to talk about every single knuckleballer in the history of baseball, which is that's a good thing to talk about, and I will talk to you about that.
In the history of baseball.
Exactly, but somehow that's legitimized, and wanting to write stories that connect a lot of people hasn't been. So I'm kind of on this push to make it normal, because it is normal. I think it's normal. I'm telling stories.
It's obviously normal. We're all normal people. Yeah. Yep. Look at all these normal people right here on this panel, and panels all throughout the day. Well, relatively normal. I mean, why be normal? Normal is boring, but normal in the sense of we're all real humans who have creativity we want to share, and I find it more valuable than painting yourself green personally. But that's creative too.
Blue.
But yeah, blue. Sorry, blue. My husband. My husband wants to get season tickets to the Jags, and I'm just like, that's the Jaguars, hon. They don't win. But yeah, whatever. I'm not seeing, not to break the fourth wall here, but I'm not seeing any of the questions maybe that were submitted during the panel.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any.
Okay, I knew we had one earlier. I'm sorry if we didn't get to your questions. I'm sure if you submit some things to the to Interlude Press Erin will be glad to pass those along to the authors, and they can answer those for you. Really quickly, while we have some time, maybe if you are any of you guys working on anything currently, got any new projects in the pipeline that you can talk about or want to tease while we've got a couple minutes?
Lynn, do you?
Yeah, I'll go first. I'm still in the finishing up Chef's Table process. I mean, it's done, but we're in the editing nightmare stage of it all. So winding that down, but I have another story that I started a number of years ago that I want to pick back up and run with it as an original book as well. So I've dropped a few hints in Annie's inbox, and she's interested. So I have to formulate that a little bit better and get that on the plate. And I have a deadline of next Friday to do that. So I'm already at a new deadline with a new book. Yay! I'm a glutton for punishment. So
News to me.
So yeah, hopefully there'll be something new. Say that again, Candy.
News to me.
Yeah.
So it may be a flexible deadline.
Yeah. So there's that.
Anybody else?
Well, I'm in the writing stage, so until it's in if people who have followed me online know that I don't do works in progress. I get it all finished, and then if we need to edit from there, we go from there, because there's nothing worse than a half-assed idea that never goes anywhere.
Agree. I work the same way.
Yeah. So I am plotting out and outlining a book that I would love to publish with Interlude, and it features women, because lesbians need some love too. And they are also African American and Latina are the leads, and because diversity matters and representation matters, and we need that. And it's kind of a not science fiction, because I don't have like the midichlorians in there, but it's a fantasy, and it's kind of based on the soulmate trope. And it was something that I had started to write as a piece of fan fiction, and I stalled out because it didn't work as fan fiction, and I couldn't break it and make it work the right way. So it's going to be an original story, and there we go. So hopefully.
I have a feeling.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I said I have a feeling you're busy launching your publishing company.
Yeah. I've got a notebook and a binder full of stuff on a story that's 3 stories in one that I hope to get to someday. I started writing it at one point, and it got tucked away. I do have actually several things that I'm planning for fan fiction that I don't intend to try to publish. But there is this sort of 3 books in one story of clashing perspectives, and probably sort of a rom-com that, I don't know, maybe hopefully I'll have a draft together by the end of next year if things settle down a bit.
Cool. Great. So we're running out of time, so I want to make sure that we get to announcing the winners of the raffles. And all of these people have won a free copy, multi-format, DRM free, of all of these novels featured here. So someone's going to get Chef's Table, someone else is going to get The Bones of You, and someone else is going to get Sotto Voce. And the great thing about these books...
And they're going to get a print book of Sotto Voce, too. I'm throwing one.
That's right. Also a print copy of Sotto Voce. And the great thing about the ebooks here, of course, as we've been saying all day, is that they come in multi-format. So you can read them on your Kindle, you can read them on your iPad, you can read them on your desktop. You can, I don't know, read them. You can put them on a big screen and read them on your TV, I guess, if you want to be that fancy.
Yeah.
You can hook up your laptop.
Eyes are going.
Yeah. Just whatever. Get creative. Come up with a really creative way of reading your ebook. So let's start with Laura. And why don't you tell us who has won a free copy of The Bones of You?
Drum roll. Life in Displacement. You have won yourself a copy of my book, and I hope you like it.
It's really pretty. It
is a really pretty book.
What?
It really
and
is.
inside it's good too. It's good inside too.
It's pretty everywhere. Inside and out.
Uh, and the book that I am most excited to read, strictly because I have not read a fan fiction that it is based on, is Lynn's Chef's Table. So why don't you tell us who's the lucky winner of that one?
Proving that we reach internationally, my winner is from Thailand, and it's Pink Husky. So congratulations,
Cool.
and I hope you love it.
You know, I love that our two titles are back to back because there's food and wine.
Yeah, that's right, and they go together.
Culinary.
And mine's filled with drunks.
You know, best thing about writing that book is an excuse to drink wine every night. Not that I need an excuse.
It's research. Well, who won a copy of Sotto Voce? Why don't you tell us that?
It is, and for following me on Goodreads, so thank you for doing that. Carolyn Bradley.
All right, Carolyn, you got Sotto Voce coming your way in print and ebook format. A signed print copy, right?
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Which will mean we have to actually wait for the print copies. We have some ARCs, but I'm sure they'd prefer to have the one that actually has gone through an edit because I can't spell judgment. I can't spell judgment.
Yeah.
It's my takeaway from the editing process. I can't spell judgment. I misspelled it all the way through the book.
I do it all the time. Both are technically, I think, spellings that you can use, but I think the one that was decided on was the one without the E.
Yeah, without the E.
It's whichever one I was not using.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so Sotto Voce is going to be released October 21st. It's available for pre-sale in the US and Canada in August. The Bones of You, it will be released November 18th and will be available for pre-order in September. And if Chef's Table is coming just in time for the holidays, December 2nd. And its US and Canada pre-sale starts in October. Winners for all of the ebooks will be emailed, and I think also if you had your question answered on air, Interlude has some lovely prizes for you, including, what did we have? Jane Austen.
We have
stickers?
Jane Austen temporary tattoos. They're
Temporary
tattoos.
tattoos.
They're so awesome. There's various Interlude. We actually have really nice bookmarks. I realize they're bookmarks, but they're nice. They're thick, and I like bookmarks. So we've got random goodies. Some of them are ridiculous, but come on, face it. You want a Jane Austen temporary tattoo, because look at those. Look how cool they are. Imprudent.
A single man in possession of a fortune must be in want of a temporary tattoo.
I want the imprudent tattoo.
That was a horrible paraphrase, butchered quote.
No, that was a nice Pride and Prejudice shout out. That was nice.
Thanks. I try. Well, on that note, I think we're going to wrap it up, but don't forget to buy all these wonderful Interlude Press books when they go on pre-sale. I believe that we've got one that's actually legitimately on sale as of today, but there are still some others out there for pre-order, and of course, be on the lookout for The Bones of You.
As opposed to the ones that are illegitimately for sale.
Yeah, they're all illegitimate. Mine's my illegitimate child, I'll tell you that much. Wow. Redheaded stepchild book right there. No, I'm kidding. But wait, I can actually show the covers of these though, right?
No.
Sorry. Oh, wait, I can show this one. This one's been revealed.
You can show the Bones of You.
I'm sorry. That's it.
That's me.
That's coming up later. Becky's going to reveal those herself, the art director for Interlude Press. I don't want to step on her toes. I forgot that. I'm glad I was stopped. Yeah. So thank you guys for tuning in. What do we have up next at 2 p.m. Eastern?
If I had my cheat sheet in front of me, I would just jam it out.
It's the 2015 authors, right?
Yes. 2015 authors. Thank you.
With Minzy Hale and Kate. I don't know how to say Kat's last name on her
Beldon.
Beldon. Okay, my French is horrible. And there's one other that I'm forgetting, and I'm a horrible human. I don't know. I forgot. I'm a horrible host. Why did you hire me?
Kate.
Kate
Fierro.
Kate Fierro. And I think Lila Suzanne will be back to announce her upcoming 2015 title. And we also have, who's not appearing on this panel, is Killian Brewer, who's going to have a book coming out. So he's got a contest going to win a free copy of his to-be-announced young adult novel. So check out that. So anyway, that's it for this panel. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I hope I was a good substitute host for the lovely C.L. Miller / Erin Finnegan.
Whatever name I go by today.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. Go for it, Laura.
Just a reminder for anybody who follows me on Twitter, the handle is Stony Boboni. Put E's in there. Take the E's from her judgment and put them in my name. And I've got the 10 winners of the Steric book listed on my Twitter. I also have made a little video, and I've hopefully pronounced everybody's name correctly. So twitter.com/Stony Boboni with an E.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.